I guess I have to come out of hibernation because somebody wants to finally talk about relievers. So I can dust myself off here and recover from being a teacher full time and get into my second job here. I'm joined by two of the hosts of In the Pen podcast from the Great Pitcher List Network. So without further ado, I'll let each of them say hello. And based on the order Nick put us in, I had the order wrong apparently on my sheet, but we'll go to Rick first. Rick, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Greg, as well. It's been a while. Always great to talk relievers with you. Looking forward to this. It's the first time I've really been able to talk relievers here. So, looking forward to this.
And Callen.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It seems to be a annual thing now, getting the three of us together. But same with Rick. It's probably the first time in a year I've gotten to talk relievers, so it's fun to be back. And I wonder why Nick gave us the wrong link. It's because it's relief pitchers, not starters. That's
he wanted to see if he could adapt, just like the real world. So there's a lot. After a very, very stagnant winter, there's been a flurry of moves, and now every day there's a new starting pitcher that's being rumored to be moved into a closer or reliever role with all of these free agent reports and things that are happening. If we have time at the end, we can kind of do which one will get the most saves out of the three that have taken over the news cycle recently. But more importantly, as we get through all of these last minute signings and things that are happening, we're narrowing the field on not only what relievers are available, but the term, and we've had this discussion before, the term traditional closer. And fantasy players want traditional closers. However, there's a push. I mean, I foresee the Dodgers running a matchup-based bullpen, just like they did the last month of the season and in the playoffs. I know some people think Tanner Scott's going to get the most run, but that's very much open for debate. With the way that they can structure their bullpen and the late inning matchups and how they want to manipulate lineup pockets. So when we're thinking about this, how is this going to affect? I'll make one more example because Kansas City came out today and said they're not going to have set rules after spring. So they might use Estevez, they might use Urseg. I think they're a little more straightforward. I think it's Urseg being the HLR like he was before he had to take over as the traditional closer near the end of the season. And he'll go against the toughest lineup pocket, whether it's the 7th, 8th, or 9th, and then they'll figure it out from there. How's this going to affect us? I mean, 15-team leagues suddenly, there was like an early 7 that were kind of separating themselves from the pack. But as all of these things keep juxtapositioning, how is that going to affect how we handle closers in these different league sizes? We'll let you go first, Callen.
Yeah, I think you said it best. The early 7 kind of stood out above the rest, and according to NFBC ADP over the last 2 weeks, they're all but one in the first 4 rounds, with Iglesias just outside of the first 4 rounds or so. But I think it's going to end up being where if you are a pay for saves guy, you are really going to have to pay for saves, where they'll probably all fall into that first 60 picks or so just to get the lockdown, quote unquote, traditional closer. And then those who played a waiver wire and want to stream and spend fab to pick up their closers, they're going to have to be aggressive very early because, like you said, there's about half the league or so that's now moved away from that traditional closer with more 2, possibly even 3-person committees.
Hey, Rick, so we don't be repetitive, how do you think this will affect people in like 12-team leagues? You get a little more wiggle room in those, but at the same token, you also need more saves to be in the top third of a league. So how are folks in 12-team leagues going to be handling all this information? Because at this moment, it's far from stable. And if this is a precursor to how the year is going to go, it might be a very busy one for the three of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think 12-teamers, you get a little bit of leeway. Definitely 10-teamers. I think the way it is now, there's about 10. I could maybe put 11 or 12 closers in that I feel comfortable with as, my first closer off the board. So that's where in 12 teamers, where it's like, it's Ryan Walker. Are you comfortable with like a Ryan Walker as your number one closer, or do you want to make sure you pay up a little bit, get one of those top, 8 or 9 guys, and at least you get some sort of, safety there. I feel like there's no real thing as safety when it comes to closers, we all know, but like it's really a 10 to 12 closer, you know, locked in closer draft right now. So 12 teamers, I think you still want to be a little aggressive getting your first guy, but then I think there's still like it's early, but there's a lot of good value later on and in the 200s. So I think you get that one guy, you want to make sure you get one, and then kind of take some shots later.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people love just kind of like right before their draft or auction's going to happen, they want quick information and they want to look at quick rankings. But how fluid do we think rankings are going to be this year? And when you're in your draft, what's more important, rankings or context? I'll let you go first on this one, Rick.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's context for sure. Whether it's league context, roster context, it all plays a part in translating rankings. So, like here at Pitcher List, like me, Nick, Scott, our rankings are more geared towards head to head, but from a closer's perspective, that's going to be different. When you're talking about roto leagues, you want to have, saves are a little bit more important than ratios or strikeouts. You want to lock in saves when you're talking roto. So, um, you have to take the rankings and then kind of construe it to your league settings, your roster construction too, because if you draft Mason Miller, you probably don't. Your next closer should probably be someone who is a safer bet for saves, but maybe he's not a big strikeout guy. You already have Mason Miller, so just because I have Jeff Hoffman ranked above someone who's more safe for saves, that doesn't mean you have to take Jeff Hoffman. It's roster construction, league construction. And like as Nick says, read the notes. You always read the notes in the list. Like there's always going to be some info in there that's going to help you make decisions better for your team and your league setting.
How about you, Colin?
Yeah, I think Rick said it best. That you also have to look at your other roster spots. If like you have safety at your starting pitcher positioning, where it's like, okay, you can take a shot on your ratios, things like that, then you maybe do wait and just either punt the category, or if you're in desperate need of some other position and you have to keep pushing relievers down, you have to look at it context wise as well. So yeah, I think Rick said it really well. The rankings are all fine and dandy until you actually get into the draft room and realize, oh shoot, I'm down this much in strikeouts, and I took Class A first, who we know is a absolute lock for 40 saves, but his strikeouts gonna be a little short, so you might have to take that shot late on a strikeout guy versus the guy who maybe can get you 10 saves, but will help you out everywhere else.
Yeah, the thing I like the least is rankings. I just and as the years go by as a writer, I'm just like, ugh. And I know people like they really enjoy the tiers that I put out weekly for the Athletic and things of that nature, but it's like sometimes those tiers go up, and then within an hour I have to go in there and switch them because inevitably something happens. It's like no matter what day we choose to post my article on there, it's always the day where there's 3 injuries are announced at 4 in the afternoon when the article goes live at 1. So you're in constant. The nice thing is if they're in like the Google Sheets, I can go in there and switch them as it's happening. But it just makes it's so hard. And all of the things in your draft and the context, and we've already spoken to it, so we can kind of probably gloss over the next thing I had on the rundown. But I think as we get closer to where people are really drafting and the main event and things of that nature are going to start going down, I think the top group of closers that we highlighted at the beginning, their auction prices, I think, are going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the ADP is gonna zig and zag on some of these guys just based on the news cycle. And the hard thing is I know we like to look at a common thing is like now today's first day of February. So everybody wants to say, all right, well, what was the January ADP versus the December ADP? But there's been so many moves mid-month that's like, that's not, it's even hard to do that because from January 15th, Hoffman's going to have a much different ADP from that point forward than he did before he signed his contract. So you can't just even look at the monthly splits because there's going to be so many, the McGill news and Devin Williams, it broke at a different time, and all of that changes all of those things that we're kind of trying to speak about. So it's going to be, I'm nervous because usually when it starts like this, it almost continues the whole way through the season. But let's have a little fun one here. We've still got 4 guys that we can label as veterans with closer experience. Do we agree on that?
Yeah.
Now how much we might want one of them to be on our team or on our fantasy roster, that remains open for debate. But of the remaining free agents that fall under this qualification, Kenley Jansen, Kyle Finnegan, David Robertson, and Craig Kimbrell, what percentage of those will actually be the closer on opening day? Callen.
I'll say 1. I think pedigree alone.
25%. All right.
25%,
yeah. Kenley Jansen's gonna, just on pedigree alone, some team's gonna put him in at least to start. Now maybe it'll be, I think we're running out of opportunities where he can come in and be the locked in immediate 30 save guy, but he could find himself in a situation like Carlos Estevez just did, where suddenly he's in a committee where he's probably, or could be a favorite, get to pick up a good 15, 20 saves at least and take the job and run. But he's still limited hard contact last year. Well, obviously doesn't have the same fastball velo, but pedigree alone and the season he had last year, I think Kenley Jansen is still a favorite for saves for most spots he'll end up at.
Yeah, he threw his cutter 80% of the time last year.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Rick.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's probably just Kenley Jansen here, and I think part of that's he turned down a deal with the Mets, right? Because he wants to get to that 500 save mark. That's his goal. That's kind of what he's aiming for now. So I think he's being very, he's being cautious. He's being picky. He's probably going to wait until maybe an injury happens in March if he doesn't get the deal he wants. But he wants to be closing out games. There's definitely still some. I mean, the Rangers. He could follow Chris Martin to the Rangers. I think he would close there. The Angels maybe as a stopgap. Maybe a team in the NL East like the Marlins or Nationals could use someone, a veteran closer. So there's some options out there. And yeah, Jansen wasn't terrible last year. 1.06 WHIP, 28.4% strikeout rate. Still has swing and miss stuff. Cutter's still really good. So yeah, and he's kind of sliding. He's going, I think he's like the 18th or 19th, maybe even later closer off the board in a lot of NFBC leagues. So I mean, that's not terrible value for someone who you kind of know is going to close out games, or at least that's how it's looking like right now.
I remember there was an interview with the Boston Globe before his time with Boston ended, and he was adamant that he wants no part. They kind of were like, well, how do you feel about these matchup based bullpens? And he was like, that's not for me. I don't want to be a part of any of that. So I've read the whispers about Detroit's not done with the bullpen, so there's a chance he can end up there. There's also been a little undercurrent about the Angels. They're still nervous about the durability of Ben Joyce. Here's a fun little trivia one. How many times has Ben Joyce, with the Angels only, major leagues, has he worked on 0 days rest? Over, under 4.5.
I'm going to say under. Yeah,
I feel like the answer's got to be under if we're asking about it.
4 times.
Yeah.
He's done it 4 times.
More than I would have guessed.
And he's never reached 50 innings as a major leaguer. And there's just been a history of things, and he was not used that way in college either. He worked on more than 1 day of rest or more every time in college. So I just think the team does have concerns about can he last up and can he have the stamina for a full season, which is something that we have to keep an eye on. So anyways, we've got all kinds of other things happening. Let's start rolling through them. I'll try and be a little faster here because, again, we started late and we only get an hour here to go through, like I said, a voluminous amount of information with all of these relievers. So we'll go with the recent ones first. And these aren't as hard as I think they are, though there's always traps. So with the Cubs, Ryan Presley, Porter Hodge, or a reliever to be named later leads this team in saves. Rick.
I'll go with Presley. It seems like he was brought in there to close. That seems to be the terminology being used, is that he will be the closer. It doesn't mean he's going to be the closer all year for the whole season. I mean, he did his striker rate plummeted last year, worst rate since 2016. But the stuff's still there. I mean, 5.28 PLV, 124 stuff plus. So I'm not totally out on Presley right now, but and as much as I like Hodge, he doesn't have a great fastball either, so he's not exactly my most exciting long-term closer, candidate anyway. So I think Presley gets the first shot here and probably gets a pretty decent, leash with it. I think he'll, depending on where, I'm probably not taking him inside the top 150, but outside of that, he might be pretty good value at this stage.
That's right about where he's landing since the move. Hodge's walk rate is always a concern. And I was excited about Ben Brown if they were going to transition him into a reliever, but we'll have to see how that plays out. All right, Colin, you get the harder one. You got the Tigers on the rundown here. Conley, Foley, Brieski, Vest, or other. I mean, there's only 4 people I'm naming.
Yeah, pick a name in a hat. I'll say Foley still leads just based on matchups alone. He seems to be a guy who will come in against righties, but I will say, and maybe it's a Yankee bias of me coming out, I'm throwing a dart at Tommy Kahnle late in drafts. I think AJ Hinch, we saw last year, he is a matchup-based reliever, a pitcher, and we saw what the Yankees did with Kahnle in the postseason, where he was basically there's 2 big lefties coming out, come get them out, we'll go to Weaver after that. And I could see Hinch using him in a similar vein with the Tigers this year, because you said Holton could take that role, but he could come in earlier, be a bulk sort of guy. So I could see Kahnle coming in late to get the save servos. You look at his StatCast page, all red, whiffs are above 30%, chase percentage over 30%. Everything just looked good for Tommy Kahnle. We know what he's been doing against lefties. That changeup he threw I don't even remember record number of times in a row in the playoffs. Nick probably knows it off the back of his hand right now, but yeah,
it was 71.
Something like that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. So yeah, I'll say Foley will get more of the matchups, but Kahnle's a guy I'll take at post 400 ADP, post 500 even, last pick of a draft, and just see if he can get 10, 15 saves, maybe something like that.
All right. I'll give you the easier one in this one. I'm going to double right back to you. So we're going to stay with Colin here. On the Royals, Carlos Estevez or Lucas Erceg? Save leader at the end of the year.
They say follow the money, and Carlos Estevez got a 2-year deal with an option for 2027. Sounds like closer money to me. So unfortunately, I'm going to say Estevez, just based on the contract he got, will lead the team in saves and ruin anyone who took the early ADP for Erceg.
Yeah. The Nationals have taught me twice to go with the person and not my gut. So after Hunter Harvey's burned me consecutive years, he's dead to me. So he wasn't even on the options. But yes, I agree. It'll probably be Estevez. All right, now we'll give you the tough one, Rick. On the Dodgers, Kirby Yates, Tanner Scott, or the field? This one's interesting because the field can end up with the most of that 3, but we'll see.
It's like that Chris Farley gift from Tommy Boy. No idea. Like I think there could be 5 guys with 10 saves here. That's how good the Dodgers are. That's how good their bullpen is. I mean, Scott's getting paid the most, but I feel like if there's anyone who's gonna, if I had to guess someone lead the team in saves, I'm gonna say Kirby Yates, just because Scott can be more of a matchup based play, and same with the rest of that bullpen: Trinan, Phillips, Kopech, Vesia. So I think Yates, just the closer experience and how well he pitched last year, is the is my guess, but he's still going really high in drafts. It still doesn't make me really excited to take that risk on him because this bullpen's just so talented. If if he has if he has 2 bad games in a row, there's no reason for Dave Roberts to keep going to him in the 9th inning. So it's probably going to be matchup based. Scott is going to give you value because he gets a ton of strikeouts anyway. So he's not a terrible. I don't hate his value right now around pick 150 just because you're at least getting probably good ratios, strikeouts, and I would guess at least 10 saves for Tanner Scott. So it's going to be a headache if anyone really thinks that Kirby Yates is going to be the closer this year. I doubt he gets the 30 saves, but I could be wrong. Roberts has shown in the past he likes to stick with one guy. So, but he just doesn't need to now. This is like the bullpen where you do not need to stick to one guy. You can run anyone out there.
No. When I did the projections for Recon after the Yates signing, I adjusted it. I think I put Yates with 21 and Scott with 16. And
Sounds
then
right.
everybody else just got like 3 or 4. I wasn't going to go crazy. But the hardest thing with Dodgers is, well, A, there's no truth to the rumor that Ohtani just wanted them signed, so Scott could make him look bad in the playoffs. But as far as all of that goes, they're going to win a bunch of games too by a lot. 2 years ago, they won, I think it was 43 games by 5 runs or more. So, I mean, not only is it going to be hard to predict who gets the saves, but it's also going to be hard to predict the save total. I mean, how many times are they going to be in 2-run games? I mean, they're going to be, obviously, and teams are going to give them their best shot. But at the same token, there's going to be a bunch of games they're winning by an avalanche. So they're not even going to have to use those guys, or they're going to come in and just get work and then frustrate owners even more because then if they get the save chance the next day and they pitch for no reason and they're unavailable, they're going to be really upset. But that's going to be a tough one. So the next grouping is what I like to label messy leverage ladders. Let's say that one 5 times fast. So starting with Boston, we've got a triumvirate. So 3 people are kind of in the mix for the saves. Callen, Hendricks, Slayton, or Chapman, leader at the end of the year.
I mean, it's Rick's team, so I hope he'd be able to back me up on this. I'm still going with Liam Hendricks. They brought him in for that 2-year deal for a reason. He's going to get the opportunity here. Chapman, we've seen moments where it's okay, I can come in and take saves, and then moments where it's, oh God, what is he doing? So I just
with Chapman, you usually know within about the first 5 pitches.
Right. Yeah.
His body language, he's not a good poker player either. When he's doing his little strut thing after a throw, I'm going to strike everybody out, then he's on. And then when he's sweating profusely and looking up at the sky, he's in deep water.
Yeah, Hendricks is going to be someone I'm going to be watching very closely in spring training, just seeing if the velo is all the way back. As long as he looks even slightly like himself, I can't see the Red Sox putting Chapman ahead of him, just based on matchups alone. Even if they want to do a committee type approach, being the righty, he's going to go in Hendricks' favor. Slayton, there's a lot of buzz, but I can see him being more of the fireman type to get the big out, to get to the big money guys in the back end. So I'm going to take Liam Hendricks here. Rick,
you agree? Even though Jim McCaffrey was pushing Justin Slayton all winter until the last article.
I would love for it to be Slayton. I hope Callen's right that it's Liam Hendricks, but I feel like my gut's telling me it's going to be Chapman because I just need to see what Hendricks looks like in March first. He was, last time he pitched, he was at 92 miles per hour in September. So obviously, we need him to get closer to the 97.6 he was in 2022, which I don't know if he gets back to that, but even if he's 96, that's going to be that should be fine for Hendricks. But Chapman looked, he had probably the best numbers last year out of this grouping. I know Slayton was really good, but I think he's probably better as a high leverage guy for them. Chapman, despite being left-handed too, he was better against right-handed hitters last year, so I'm not too worried about the platoon splits. He has that splitter now that's really devastating against righties. So I want it to be Liam Hendricks, but I feel like Chapman might be the best option for them in April. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, the velocity. Not that spring games are the end all be all, because we know guys can throw harder when the games are actually count. But we need to see something from Liam Hendriks, because
Yeah.
when you were citing those readings from AAA, I was like posting them going, this isn't good, because it was originally, oh, he's going to pitch in September just so we can
Right.
get a look at him, and then it was like, no,
He's not ready.
we'll wait till
Yeah.
next year. So the hardest thing is that he's like a great person and somebody you
Yeah.
want to root for with
Yeah.
everything he's been through with the cancer, and he's a staunch supporter of so many different communities, and he's a man of the people. And it's like, I want Liam Hendriks to be Liam Hendriks again. I just hope that can happen. Do we care about anyone on the White Sox?
I mean, if Prelander Baroa starts throwing more strikes, maybe. But other than that, I don't think
I
so.
could get
right?
younger too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the only thing that intrigues me, unless there's, I don't know, maybe that's where Lance Lynn ends up closing. He goes back
Oh,
to
for
the White
God's sakes.
Sox.
If you're going to come back and close, I sure as hell hope it's not going to be for the White Sox. What a
Yeah, I
waste
know,
of
that's
money.
sad. Yeah.
Am I crazy to be interested in James Karinchak?
I mean,
He's
no.
he's a non-roster invitee.
Yeah, I mean, stuff wise, he's up there. It's kind of like Burrow. It's like if he's throwing strikes, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
At least I like Baroa, but at least Karinchak, as crazy as he is with his ball flips and everything else, has a track record of closing some games.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he first came up, we thought he was going to be the next guy there in Cleveland, possibly, and then just like
Sticky stuff did,
the sticky stuff, and then
yeah.
then the last year he had the shoulder stuff, so he was pretty much shut down for the year. But yeah, I mean, lightning in the bottle string. I mean, it's one of those things where if he can get you 10 early, maybe. But I don't know. I'm probably going to avoid them just because they're going to have another very difficult season in that division. A second closer on another team is probably going to be just as good, or if not better, than anyone that they can get to a 10 save threshold. All right, on the Rangers, Callen, Martin, Garcia, John Gray. What the hell's going on around here?
I want to see what Gray does in spring. I'm kind of intrigued by that, but for now, I'm going to say Chris Martin, similar to what we said about the follow the money. You know, they gave him the contract, and I agree with what Rick said earlier.
He took a hometown deal. It was only like $4.5 million.
Yeah.
I mean, he gave them the "I live in your state" discount, which is cool. I mean, you guys might be too young to see Swingers, but is Chris Martin just the guy behind the guy? No, I'm
for now. Yeah, he's the placeholder.
I like him, but I mean, it seems like his MO is, I just like coming down in the 8th inning, mowing people out and doing my thing, and then that's it.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Rick had said earlier in the show, that Kenley Jansen or even Kyle Finnegan, this could be a spot for them to compete for saves. I have a sneaky suspicion the leader for saves in Texas is not on the roster right now, but as of what we have right now, I think it'll go Chris Martin. But again, if they don't, then maybe John Gray becomes a late flyer that I'm intrigued with. So, but for now, I'll say Chris Martin.
Well, the hardest thing with Texas is they are adamant that they're not going to go over the 241 million threshold. Now, as their roster is currently constructed, I think they have like 5 million wiggle room. However, I was reading the article from Evan Grant on the Dallas Morning News. If guys hit their extrapolators in their contract, then they could surpass the CBT threshold. So that means you've got to deal Tavares, or you've got to deal Maley. You got to do something. They can't do it as the roster is currently constructed. Grant is driving the John Gray bus. I don't know how much of this we can believe. He does have a good slider. If he can get lefties out, then maybe we're interested. And then you're thinking about the Jeff Hoffman velo bump as going from starting pitcher to a reliever. So if he can get 1.5 miles, 2 miles per hour on his fastball, then okay, maybe we're onto something. And then he did pitch 4 times last year as a reliever. It's a very, 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 very small sample size, but he poured in strikes and got I think it was 10 strikeouts against 1 walk in his 7 innings as a reliever.
Just the fact
at least there's something.
Yeah, and just the fact this offseason that he's come out himself and said and mentioned closing. It wasn't prompted by anybody. He's the one who vocalized it.
Yeah, well, I think they're kind of telling them behind closed doors, you might have to do this because we want to see what Kumar can do. I mean, and that'll make Nick happy. So if he's listening out behind us, that might be something that excites him. So I think this one's easier than I thought when it was messy, but maybe I mislabeled it. But Rick, Hoffman, Green, or Jimmy Garcia?
Yeah, I mean they're talking about Hoffman as the closer. That's kind of when he signed that was mentioned. And that's who I would lean with is Hoffman being the closer here, but I'm not sure from a team standpoint if that's the best way to go, because the Phillies love using him as that high leverage guy to come in right after the starter, came out to keep them, keep the lead intact early in games, and that was really where Hoffman excelled. And Jimmy Garcia was so good with Toronto last year before he got traded to Seattle. So, I mean, I would feel confident in Garcia as the closer and Hoffman being the high leverage guy, but it sounds like they paid him to be the closer. That's the verbiage they're using. So I think it's going to be Hoffman, but Garcia is like basically free in all drafts. So it's not the worst, in a deep league, not the worst dart throw. To see how things shake out. And also, I mean, Hoffman's failed 2 physicals before signing with Toronto, so that's got to be a little concerning, right? I mean,
it is, but I think those are because those teams are looking at him as a starter.
Yeah,
people are just like, yeah, he can't be a starter. So yeah, those things you can't forget them. And the good news is they'll probably keep his price point reduced. So if you want Hoffman as your second reliever, it might not be a bad gamble, especially if you've got a solid guy like Helsley as your RP1. You can take a chance with Hoffman, and then you can kind of just take stabs at the end, or handcuff yourself with people who could replace Hoffman if things went sideways with him, or if you think who the guy is going to be in St. Louis after Helsley's traded. But that's supposed to be coming up a little later in the rundown, although we're going to have to go quicker here. All right, Arizona, Callen, Justin Martinez, AJ Puck, or are they going to piss us off and sign somebody like Jansen?
I could see them pissing us off, but for now, I'll say Justin Martinez. I'm still interested in AJ Puck, but what we saw from Martinez was just electric stuff. He's another guy like Baroa. He just needs to start throwing some more strikes, but the stuff is electric, and I think the Diamondbacks want to keep him in that role, and we know it's going to be a good role of what they've done this offseason. They're going to be a much better team than they were last year, so as long as playing the matchups, I'm going to say Martinez.
And I'd appreciate Lavulo not making Martinez do like back-to-back more than 3 out appearances in Tampa Bay. That'd be cool. Don't run the poor kid into the ground. I mean, Martinez is very tantalizing, especially from a strikeout standpoint. And Puck is very, very good. And he's going to be the person they use against Ohtani whenever they play the Dodgers, whether it's the 7th, 8th, or 9th. So, I think he still has that lefty matchup hang up in his closet, which makes it difficult to just think that they'll let him be the closer. This could be another one where both guys get 10 or more and really frustrate us. Is there anybody in the Rockies that interests you, Rick? I can name them all, but we're up against the.
Halverson definitely interests me. I don't think he's going to he's not going to open as the closer there, but if they trade Tyler Kinley or just move on from him as the closer, I think if Halverson gets a chance, yeah, I'm intrigued. Throws 100 miles per hour, has a pretty good secondary. I think he can be a legit closer there. I think you don't have to worry too much about Coors with him because he has so much, bat missing ability.
The weird thing is they actually have a pretty decent bullpen.
They actually do, yeah.
That's like the one strength we can name on the Rockies is they've got some live arms for a change. I mean, they're finally realizing we need people that can throw hard in the late innings to help us survive the environment we make these poor guys pitch in. And there's some young names coming down too with Zach Agnos and Jaden Hill that are also going to be intriguing. So this is a team that could, when relievers need to be traded, if they're savvy enough, because we've seen in the past they didn't sell high on Daniel Barr when they had the opportunity, that they could actually profit at the trade deadline and move a couple of people if they know they're not going to be their closer of the future, or they just want to cash in on the moment. Callen, anyone on the Marlins? Do you like Fauché? Do you like Tinoco, Bender, or does it not matter?
It's going to be possibly the worst team in baseball, but I think Fauché leads the team in saves. You saw them use him down the stretch in that sort of mold. Now, again, I don't know how many saves are going to be out there, but for trying to project it,
yeah,
I hope someone emerges. But for now, it's a steer clear. But if you really need it, Fauché probably is the guy I'll go with.
All right, Rick. This is a fun one. The Phillies. Romano. And I'm thrown off because I read as you say it like the cheese, but then the Blue Jays, Dave Martinez would always say Romano. And so I was like, am I saying it wrong? Well, who's right here? But anyways, him, Kirkring, or Matt Strom?
I
Even though we're forgetting about Alvarado, but I just
these are the three. Yeah, these are the three to worry about. I think they're both Romano and Kirkring are like, their ADP isn't too high right now. It's almost like I wouldn't hate taking both of them and seeing how things play out. Because Kirkring, obviously, closer of the future stuff. But they brought Romano in for a reason. He's almost certainly going to get the first chance at saves. So I guess I'll go with Romano here, gets the most saves. But I don't hate, piggybacking with Kirkring and just seeing, because we still don't know what Romano's health's going to look like. Like, what's his fastball velo going to be a month from now? So, still question marks there with him. So it doesn't hurt to have Kirkring as a fallback option.
Yep. Nationals. Callen, Jorge Lopez, Jose A. Ferrer, or one of the other guys that kind of, I mean, Derek Law is kind of like their multi-inning matchup guy. I don't see him pressing into it. Let's make this easier. Can you canvas the Nationals bullpen right now by just taking those two late?
Yeah, I think this is another team that the closer probably isn't on the roster right now. I could see them. I would say Kyle Finnegan, but they DFA'd him, so that's definitely not an option. But
yeah, I think that bridge is burnt.
That bridge is definitely burnt, but I could see them being in play for even a David Robertson, or like another one like Rick said, where Kenley Jansen could be, and if he goes there, he becomes the immediate favorite. But for now, Ferrer stuff intrigues me, but just based on the fact that he's a lefty, I'll say Lopez leads the team in saves, but it's not exactly one I'm very excited about. It's going to hurt you in a lot of other categories.
Yeah,
Lopez was really good with the Cubs when he got there last year.
He was, and I think the Nationals will kind of see that template and have them throwing that same pitch mix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could probably do worse than him as your third reliever. Like better, but you could probably do worse. Rick, you kind of mused this in the intro here, so we'll let you expound upon it. Can we trust Ryan Walker as the closer? Not so much Ryan Walker the reliever, but Ryan Walker the role.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like how you worded this, because I like Ryan Walker the reliever. He's not your prototypical closer. He doesn't throw hard. His sinker fastball is not very good. But his slider is it's so good that I think, with Duvall's having issues, with the strike zone and everything, I think Walker's pretty safe. And he's done this for 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years now. So I really do like Walker, and like his slider is truly one of the best, sliders of all relievers. So 38% whiff rate last year. Yeah, I think he's fine as like a back end RP1. But I'm not sure. I don't know if the strikeout rate might come down a little bit. The ratios aren't going to be as dominant as they were last year, but I still think he's pretty good back end closer.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't love everything I read from what Buster Posey says about Camilo Doval. It just seems like, and they were teammates, I believe, right? It almost feels like Posey wants him to get back there. I don't know, or they need to do it to establish a better trade market for Duvall. Yeah. We'll have to see how that all plays out. I honestly thought this winter they would just trade him and try and give him a fresh start and kind of work on their own thing there. So we'll see how all that goes. But they shed payroll by trading Taylor Rogers. I don't know. Taylor Rogers last year did not look good to me. He had 4 holds. I just don't know that. I don't know. I just don't know that he can force his way into the mess that Reds bullpen could actually be this year, but we'll see how that goes. All right. We talked about Ben Joyce, so I'm going to skip that one. Callen, how many saves will actually Felix Bautista over under 30?
I'll say over just because we know what the Orioles are gonna be, and
okay,
I think we've kind of seen the Orioles didn't really trust. They tried a bunch of people towards the back end, and they're just waiting to get Bautista back. And I don't know if they have anybody else on this roster as long as he's healthy that would even be in competition for saves. So,
oh no, he's going to be the closer. It's just more.
Always be closer, yeah. But
all of the verbiage about we're going to ease him into things. I don't think he's going to. I think if you remember, like when Devin Williams came back last year, they didn't use him on back to back for a period of time. I think you're going to see the same thing. I think the first month they're just going to kind of let Felix do his thing, but they're not going to use him on back to backs until we get into May and stuff. That's the only reason I would be worried he might not be able to reach 30 just because of the limited workload early on.
Yeah, that's true. And something to he's appropriately priced right now for ADP with that concern, but I think that there's definitely could be some value there just waiting on that. Once he gets eased in, you know how competitive the AL East is going to be, and they're probably going to be forced to abandon ship on that pretty quickly on. So I think
I was going to say, unlike the Dodgers, they're probably going to be playing a lot of close games. That there's going to be a bevy of opportunities there. All right, I know Rick and I were on this train last year, so this is a tough one. Does Trevor McGill begin and end the year as the Brewers closer?
I think so. There's definitely going to be a lot of competition there eventually. At the beginning of the season, I don't think as much, but there are guys in AAA, and who knows? Maybe Abner Uribe snaps into being a really good reliever here. There's a lot of, Nick Mears is on the roster. He's very talented as well. But I do think McGill finishes the season as the closer as well. He's just, that's barring he stays healthy. And that's the big question with him is he's always had health concerns. He's like 6'8", 250, throws 99. He's going to have health concerns. So that's my only issue. But like the talent I think his strikeout rate's going to go back up to 30% again. I think he's due for a huge, a breakout season and becoming one of the bigger name closers in the game as long as he can get to 50 plus innings. I think that's the big mark there for him.
So you're not worried about the second half decline?
A little. The health I think played a factor, and it's where is he at health wise? Can he sustain a full season? He probably needs like an IL stint at some point in the middle of the year. So yeah, that you're starting to talk about like Pete Fairbanks from 2 years ago, where it's like, as long as he can get to, and Fairbanks still hasn't gotten to 50 innings yet. So, I still think I want to take a chance on McGill just because of the upside there, but there's definitely health concerns.
Yeah, I think the Brewers are one of the most interesting teams from a dynasty standpoint, just because when you get beyond this year, can Uribe harness that stuff and throw strikes? Is Mizorowski going to become a reliever? Craig Yoho has a very highly rated changeup, like the person they just traded in Devin Williams. We don't know to what level that changeup is, but he was dominant and pouring in strikes in the minor leagues as he was moving up the food chain. So they're going to have a lot of tough decisions as they move forward here. The reason I'm worried about McGill finishing the year as a closer is half health and half if the Brewers drift in the standings, that could be someone that they move and they just plug in those young guys to see what they got down the stretch. So that's kind of where I think he can probably get to 20 saves, and I think he becomes a trade candidate to help them continue retooling on the fly for 2026, if that makes sense. So And we didn't put the Rays on there, but I think when you said Fairbanks, it kind of triggered my mind because I see Useda as a buzzy guy on a lot of places. However, this will be a fun one. Useda or Biggie if Fairbanks gets traded. From that point forward, who gets more saves? Callen.
Probably Useda. I'm going to buy the hype with Useda at this point.
You're not worried about him being the HLR? Because they could have
No.
made him the closer last year when Fairbanks went down, and they used him in the highest leverage situation most of the time.
They could have. We said the same thing about
Jason Adam.
Yeah, but that's kind of was where I was going with it. Was Jason Adams. We thought was going to be the HLR, and as soon as Fairbanks, every time he got hurt, eventually they did finally cave, and like we needed to make Adams the closer. And I think that's going to happen with Useda. Now, am I really going to jump in the pool if that happens and get one of them? No, because we know the Rays like to make it as messy as possible. So if they lose their capital C closer, Fairbanks, I don't know if I'm really taking a shot on any of them. But if I had to pick, Useda would probably be him.
I know he's left-handed, but Mason Montgomery really intrigues me there. I mean, he throws 90.
Heat, yeah,
he throws 99. Nasty breaking ball. I don't know if they're going to try to stretch him out. He does some. Yeah. So I think, between him and Biggie and Useda, you don't even need Fairbanks. Those three could be an absolute force at the back end of games.
Wow.
I like all three of them. It's a really good.
I think this is, if they don't trade him now, I think they'll trade him in season. They didn't want to do anything last year when his family was going through the health issues and things that would have been a bad look to be like, hey, Pete, thanks for everything. We're jetting you out of town. Yeah. However, with his contract next year jumping up, this year he's only 2.67. Next year it jumps up to 6 or 8. I think it is with the options. So I think this is the year that he may start the year with them, but he's not going to finish the year with Tampa Bay, which is going to lead us to these tough decisions hopefully that maybe the answer will be made for us with whichever reliever is performing the best leading up to that time. Let's give people a little in-season things, and we'll end with a couple of fun ones here at the end. But with waiver or free agent acquisition, do you guys prefer being aggressive early? Like Kirby Yates is my guy last year. I'm bidding 150 on him, and I'm hoping I lock in those saves. Or I'm going to throw $5 on a couple of guys each week and see if one of them pops.
I'm probably more of a go ahead, Rick.
No, you can go.
I'm probably more of a second option. Unless it's a very clear, like here's an injury and it's just go to, then I'll jump in the pool. But if it's just hey, this guy's underperforming and lose their job, I'll throw one or two. I'll take one spec reliever at the end of the draft, and as soon as it doesn't look like they're going to be, I'll cut bait and just pick up someone new and try and burn and churn that until I need to spend it. But I'm much more likely just to try and lock saves down to where I'm competitive and then can hopefully hit on a speculative guy than going deep to try and make up saves late.
How about you, Rick?
Yeah. That's kind of how I am too, because for all the Kirby Yates that there were last year, there's plenty of missed opportunities where you spend half your fab and the guy's not closing in a week. So Julian Merriweather, just off the top of my head from 2 years ago. Right. I'll take a chance. I'd try to think like 2 weeks ahead with cheap speculative ads and be like, okay, this guy's starting to falter here. Like, who's the next guy? Maybe I'll throw $1 or $2 on him. And it's just kind of have like one spot on your roster where you're kind of churning and just hoping that it hits it eventually. But that's all to say that you have a pretty good foundation with your roster as is, and you have at least 2 closers you can count on already.
All right, let's have a little fun here. I didn't put this on the run sheet, but Alexis Diaz, he's going to bounce back. We forget he was among the league leaders in saves 2 years ago. Or is he going to get bounced? Callen, bounce back or bounced?
Bounced. There's so many red flags last year, and we saw not only did they trade for Taylor Rogers, they were in the mix for Carlos Estevez. It's a brand new manager too, so there's no loyalty to Alexis Diaz. I think Francona will not hesitate to pull the plug as soon as it gets messy, which we know it will. So,
Well, if Diaz
Alexis
doesn't give him a stroke first.
Exactly. Yeah, so he's a full-on, pretty much off my board, Alexis Diaz. I will not have any Alexis Diaz in my rosters.
All right, we'll stay in the division.
We'll add someone.
We'll stay in division. Rick, David Bednar, bounce back or bounced?
I think Bednar bounces back. I'm okay with Bednar. I think the stuff was still present last year. He there's talk about him tipping his pitches, and that led to the curveball being abysmal and getting hammered. I think he makes some tweaks. If he's healthy, he wasn't healthy heading into the season last year.
Stop,
I think
soft tissue injuries, please, David.
I know. And
then with a dad bod, he wouldn't be tweaking his oblique. Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? But I did think I saw something saying not best shape of his life, but he's in in better shape this year or something. So it's something to keep an eye on in March. But I think he bounces back. I don't know if he's an all-star level closer again, but he's gonna be. I think he'll be pretty solid for you as a second closer candidate.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for him to sneak in as the Pirates rep for the All-Star game now that they got Skeens. They don't need they don't need a token Pirate tossed in there. They've got a stud now. Should we be using solds and not saves in more industry or across the board?
Yes. I think good closers still carry more value anyway in those types of formats. It would be interesting if there's a way to get like a half hold format. I know it's easier in points leagues to kind of measure that out, but even in head-to-head or roto
fair
leagues,
though. I mean, if Lucas Erceg is facing the hardest part of every team's lineup, his hold is just as important as Carlos Estevez's save is if he faces the 7, 8, 9 batters. I understand how people do that from a volume standpoint, but if you're using souls, what I think you're trying to do is you're trying to identify the best relievers. So the guys who are getting the most high leveraged opportunities when you look at BB Ref, or the guys with the best WPAs on a team. These are the guys when the game is on the line, they're locking in their team to help them win. And of course, in that format, you're streamlining things because now I don't have to flip a coin between Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott, whether they're in the 7th, 8th, or 9th. If I get my hold or a save, then I'm happy as pie. I say this selfishly because this year I switched my tout league. I'm no longer in the head-to-head points. I'm in the league that does use the solds, so it'll be interesting. I'm really curious how people in the industry will handle relievers in that type of a draft and format. That's part of the reason I asked to be in that league. I'm like, if I'm writing about this stuff, it'd be better for me to know how people treat or view them. Is someone still going to take, a closer early on when I can get another guy in his bullpen 150 picks later? I love Yohan Duran, but in that format, I'm just as good waiting and taking Griffin Jacks. You know what I mean? So it changes how I think especially the numbers thing. When I was breaking that down, I'm going to do an article on Recon about it, just about the number of relievers that are available when you're looking at how many. It's just mind blowing how many guys get like 30 plus souls versus just 30 saves. It changes some of the way you can view and handle things in that manner. All right, Callen, where's Ryan Helsley getting traded?
Oof.
And
Dodgers
who replaces him?
I'm gonna say the Angels. They've been
Angels.
You mentioned the Angels as a team who could use the closer. They've kind of been in this weird, what are we gonna do sort of position this year, where they're still trying to be better and they're trying to make the big splash, and they're not fully sold on Ben Joyce. I don't think so. I could see them making a splash for him or Robert Suarez. It wouldn't shock me if they get that. As far as who replaces him, Ryan Fernandez, maybe. It's kind of that's another one, and I'll probably shrug my shoulders and avoid Helsley
Yeah,
gets out of
that's
there.
Yeah.
they,
I
they
guess
might have to share
Fernandez,
him with like him
maybe,
and Libertor. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. All right,
maybe
Rick.
Jojo Romero. We've seen him in the mix. I kind of like him.
Interesting. Rick, Suarez, where is he getting traded? They're going to trade him.
Yeah.
There's so much going on with the Padres. I'm surprised when they're talking about we're looking to trade Michael King or Dylan Cease to shed salary. Suarez can't be far behind because he's got an opt-out at the end of the year, so he can get right out of there anyways. So if they're going to pay $10 million for him to be the closer, they might as well let somebody else pick up the tab.
Yeah, and this would be if the Rangers had the money, this would be a good fit, but they would
Well,
have to clear some space. Or
I was gonna say on recon, I was like, why not Tavares for Suarez?
yeah, they need an outfielder.
work.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense. Yeah, that could work. Or if I've heard people talk about the Nationals being surprisingly competitive. Maybe if they do start out strong, maybe like an early season trade to Washington could be in the mix here for Suarez.
They have young
Yeah,
talent.
they do. The lineup looks like it could be okay. It's just the rotation going to hold up, and then the bullpen is a big question mark.